Hey designers, welcome back to another episode of How to Draw Cars. We're going to continue our Improve My Car Sketch series. This drawing was sent in by Erik. He's 14 years old and he's from Sweden. We're going to go over what he did right, what looks good, and what we can do to improve it. But before we get started, if you're struggling to take your design and drawing abilities to the next level, or you're preparing a portfolio for application to a top design school, be sure to check out the tailored course program at howtodrawcars.net. Our students are winning competitions, getting accepted to the world's most prestigious design schools, and getting awarded scholarships to those very same schools. If you have the passion and are ready to take your skills to the next level, check out the tailored course program at howtodrawcars.net. So let's talk about what's working in this sketch. First of all, Erik is using a rear three-quarter view, which is the first one we've had on the show since we started. And the car and the design drawing has a lot of energy. It's very dynamic. This view is very dynamic, and he's rendered it in a very energetic way. The next thing that's really positive is the interior inclusion. He's got the seats. You can see through the upper of the car. It helps the drawing look three-dimensional, and that is a great thing to see. Another thing is he's got his center line in the car, which shows the sections of his design as well as the door cuts as well. So he's doing a lot of things really positively here. So let's take a look at some of the things we can improve. So the first thing that jumped out at me was that the front wheel appears larger than the rear wheel. He has them as the same size drawn across the page, but in this perspective, in the rear three-quarter perspective, the front wheel needs to be smaller than the rear wheel in order to get the perspective to work from the front to the rear. The next thing that we want to look at is that the design looks like it's two separate cars. If you look at the way the back is handled and where the line work goes and where the front and the door detail and the section in the door in this area, it looks like they're not connected. This ends here and this ends here, and there's not a lot of vocabulary crossover and carryover and carry through between the front and the rear of the car. The next thing we want to look at is the undercut in the door. There's an interesting undercut here that should be casting a shadow, and he doesn't really highlight that or really include that as part of the feature of the design. And I think that's an important thing that we need to look at and try to really highlight. The next thing I want to mention are the wheels. I can't tell if these lines represent shading or some kind of spokes, but it's important to have wheels that match the aesthetic vocabulary of your car. Lastly, we've got to talk about the elephant in the room, which is this door vent here, and it's very unresolved. The belt line into the A-pillar, and then is this vent for cooling of the engine? Is it to extract air out of the interior? There's a reason why cars don't have a vent like this in this location, and that reason is because they rob interior space. In order to get this vent to be, you have to push the door in, and you're pushing it in onto the passenger. So when we do the redesign, we're going to address that. The best way to resolve all of these issues is to redraw the car in a side view first. So this is the first side view version that I did of Erik's sketch to try to resolve some of the issues that we just talked about. As you can see, I put some solid wheels on here, some 5 spokes that give the car a real planted look and match the vocabulary of the rest of the vehicle. The second thing is that the car is much more connected now, front to rear. The undercut that we spoke about that he didn't really do that much with, I made that a feature of the body and an essential part of the theme. And I kept his Hofmeister kick. When I talked to Erik and talked to this version of the design with him, he said that he saw the car as more of a hatchback and that my cab forward theme didn't really match his original sketch, which facilitated a second version. This is the hatchback version, same wheelbase, but you can see the hatch here. And overall, I think the vehicle really relates pretty well to what Erik did originally. We've got the Hofmeister kink. We've got the body side section. Everything works to create the illusion that this car is the side view of Erik's design. So let's go forward now and apply these resolved issues to the rear 3/4 view. So looking at Erik's sketch again, I noticed that his ground plane angle is a straight line, or nearly so. And this is okay, you can have a ground plane angle that is a straight line, but his sill and his bottom of his rear fascia don't align with this line, and so we'll address this in the demo. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do, let me hear you say it, put in my ground plane. Now I'm going to use a ground plane that is not a straight line, that it actually is below the horizon line, and that's going to give me a V section when it comes to my rear fascia. So I'm putting in my front wheel, and I throw that line back to make sure my rear wheel is going to be taller or larger than my front wheel. There's the center line, and just like in my side view, I go back 3 wheels before putting in my rear wheel. This ensures that my proportions are correct. And then I put the center line in my axle, front and rear, and come back and work on that cylinder, that rear cylinder that allows me or lets me know where my rear touchdown point is on the driver's side, if you're in the US, which would be the left side of the vehicle. And now I can start to build the body, and there's the sill, the bottom of the sill, that's relatively parallel to the ground plane. So those 2 lines, you can see, they're in perspective, but they relate to each other. And it looks like the car now is going to be planted on the ground, square to the ground. So now I'm going to put in the bottom of my fascia. Now I want you to watch what I do here. I draw that other side of the ground plane and it's wrong, and then I go back and I fix it. So self-correcting is a big part of developing your drawing. So I've got my rear end kind of blocked in, and now I can start to work on the DLO, and I can start to build the upper of the vehicle. So here's another example of self-correcting. I noticed that the side glass looks a little low. It looks like it's a little squashed. So when I come back and start to draw it again, I raise the roof line a bit and let the upper breathe a little bit. Here's that undercut section that was so prevalent in Erik's drawing. So there's the door section, and now I can start to work that undercut and give it some expression as it goes down the body side from the front vent into the rear wheel opening. If you do like this kind of content, the Improve My Car Sketch series, please leave a comment below. Let me know that these are fun to watch, that you're learning something, and that they are providing a benefit. The other thing I'm curious about is this a hard view for you? Have you done a lot of rear 3/4 views before? Is this one of the ones that you can do? Is this a problem for you? What other views do you struggle with? Again, let me know in the comments. So now that we've got the quote-unquote underlay finished, I can switch gears, all pun intended, and pick up my Prismacolor Premier pencil and really start to lean on it and tell the story of this design. You'll see how quickly the drawing comes together because all the heavy lifting, all the hard work has already been done. So I can basically use my heavier line quality now to go around the vehicle and really start to block it in and make it look solid. And really helping that solid look is a set of deep dish 5-spoke wheels. Now another thing that I'm going to put in here is my ground shadow line, and that again will be parallel to my ground plane and my sill. And now I'll put in the infamous front door vent. It's a little bit less exaggerated than what Erik had, but it's still there and it's still an important part of his theme. And speaking of his theme, I have to give Erik a lot of credit. As a 14-year-old, this is a really good drawing. I don't see a lot of 14-year-olds who can really handle a pencil and do this kind of shading. Big props to him for submitting the drawing and just doing such a spectacular job. I would highly recommend Erik keep up the good work and keep pushing his talent. If you have a drawing that you'd like to submit to the channel for the Improve My Car Sketch series, you can send it to the address on the screen now. Be sure to let me know where you're from, how old you are, a little bit about maybe what your long-term goals are, and we'll see about getting you added to the show. Okay, so let's review the final drawing. So the first thing we talked about correcting was the imbalance between the front wheel and the rear wheel, and making sure that the rear wheel was larger than the front wheel so the perspective read correctly. The second thing we wanted to talk about, or we wanted to improve, was the flow of the vehicle from the front part of the car to the rear part of the car, and make sure that they look connected. The third thing was the undercut in the door, and really make that a feature of the theme and a highlight as the body side came out of the vent and into the rear quarter. The fourth thing was the wheels, to improve the design of the wheels. And lastly was to make sure that the sill and the rear fascia matched the perspective of the ground plane. One thing I didn't mention throughout the whole video was that Erik, it appears to me that Erik has turned the front wheel as I have drawn it, and I don't know if he wanted to do that, but please let us know, Erik, in the comments if that was your intent, to have the front wheel at an angle as if the car was turning. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.